Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're excited to get started. Let us introduce ourselves. I'm Nancy. I'm on the marketing team here at Civic, and Ty is one of our AI engineers. If you're here today, it's probably because you're feeling like everyone else is already an AI expert and you don't know how to get started. You're definitely in the right place. So today, we're all about helping you build practical skills. We've got a few workflows, a few demos that we're going to be walking you through, and these can all be used in your daily work. I will hand it over to Ty.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. We're very excited to have everyone here. We're going to specifically focus on the service industry, but I'm sure you can take a lot of the ideas and the prompts that we use inside your own workflow. If you're starting your own business, if you're in a job already and you're trying to optimize your specific workflows, you can take a lot what we've done and incorporate into that. And if there's stuff you're still a little bit stuck towards the end of the presentation, you can always reach out to me or Nancy, and we'd love to help and give you ideas on how you may be able to use that. So we're going to be focusing specifically on scheduling, pricing, quoting, and invoicing, and showing you how you can be faster and more accurate. Just a little bit about me. My name is Ty Mark Avnit. She introduced me, AI engineer. I really love this technology. I think it's going to really help us to move a lot quicker, empower us to be more creative, do a lot of the less things that we don't like, and focus more on the creative things and being more with people as we are more social. So as we get started, I'm just going to do a quick pulse check, and I'm going to talk to you about how you might be using multiple different tools at the moment. And what I mean by tools, I talk about like maybe your Excel, your Gmail, your iMessage. You've got so many different tools that you're using that you have to mentally use together. So if you're working in a company, for example, you might be using your Gmail, your calendar, your Excel. You've got a CRM system like HubSpot. You've got a CRM system like ServiceTitan, and you find yourself having to work between all these different systems and be able to move the data and be able to organize it in such a way. And a lot of the workflows and the systems that you have in place are either not documented or they're inside of your head. And it makes it very difficult for you to be able to streamline or automate your workflows going forward. And generally what we found is that we found that people generally hire people in those specific roles to be able to manage these different systems, to be able to move data from one system to another. And we want to show you how you can alleviate a lot of that. We've also got a specific client that we work with. We're going to go through a few little use cases of where we satisfied and moved a problem for a client that was really easy for them to solve. And we'll describe and go through it in a little bit more detail. And then just want you to get a mental note of how much time you spend between these different systems. So think about when you're checking your Gmail, then you have to go check your calendar, and then you have to check your CRM system. And you spend a lot of time copying data between all these different systems. Or you've got someone you've hired within your company that is actually doing that on your behalf. You just want to be able to ask questions. You just want to be able to get the data done. But you don't want to feel the need to go into these systems and learn how they work. Why can't you just get the data that you need, answer the questions you need, and be able to move forward? Like I mentioned, you're living in a world where all your tools are siloed, right? You've got QuickBooks, you've got Bill.com, you've got HubSpot, you've got your ServiceTitan, and all of these different systems don't organically work together. There's no ways for you to be able to say, okay, let me talk from QuickBooks to ServiceTitan, to a different system, to your Gmail, to your calendar. It's all indifferent. And you have to be able to constantly remind yourself, okay, oh, now I need to be able to schedule. Let me go into my Gmail to see if any clients have emailed me. Okay, let me look at my schedule. Do I have to book up a following appointment? And you have to manually manage all that context, and it's not fun. It's really not interesting. It's something that I just dislike doing, and I'm sure a lot of people dislike doing it. And what happens if you could hire a personal assistant to be able to do that on your behalf, right? What happens if you could get someone who you could put at the center that had access to all these different tools, where you could just ask it in natural language and say, listen, what is my latest email? Can you check if there is any open appointments for this client tomorrow? Can you prioritize events for me? Can you push this data from my Excel spreadsheet into my CRM system? You can ask all these different questions without having to go into these individual systems, learn how they work, and be able to pull that data. And there's a saying that's going around now in the AI space that everything is going to eventually become an API. If you don't really know what an API is, it's just a way that these services expose their data to the outside world. So if you as a developer, for example, need to go fetch the latest invoices from your CRM system, you can build an application that will then be able to talk to that system so you can get it. And that's what we feel like is going to happen in this AI space, is that every single one of these systems is going to become an AI API endpoint, and your assistant, your large language model in this instance, is going to be able to talk to these systems through an API access layer. And that's where it becomes really efficient. You've probably tried AI already. You've used ChatGPT, you've used Claude, you've used Gemini, you've used something to write, summarize emails, ideate, really understand how it'd be able to help you, and it's really good at being able to do that. One thing I would really suggest right now is if you're using any of these free tools, spend the extra $20 and pay for one of these services. You don't have to pay for all of them, just pay for either ChatGPT, Claude, one that you prefer, because the reason you should be paying for them is that the difference between the latest models, the ones that are using the latest language models versus the free ones, there's a vast difference between those two. And if you want to be ahead of the game and really understand how powerful these systems are, you have to be using the latest one. So we find a lot of people like turn to ChatGPT and say, okay, but it can't do this, it can't do that. But we're like, okay, but in a couple months, like they release a model that's actually incredibly good, but you're not using that one. So tend to go out and try that. But yeah, so going back to this point is the large language model can't see your calendar, doesn't know your leads. It has no idea what price book data looks like or what invoice are outstanding. General AI is smart, but it is absolutely blind to your business. So how do you get a large language model, this assistant that's super smart, integrate into your business and help you in that end? So what happens if it wasn't blind? What happens if it could see into your SEO system? What happens if it could see into your price book data? What happens if it could see into your invoicing system? What happens if it can see into your Gmail, your calendar? What if AI could give AI access actual business tools and just tell it to do what in English? So think of just hiring someone into your business who has access to all these different tools that you can speak to in natural language, and it will have access to all this different data. And that's where it becomes really powerful, because you're not just leaning on the large language model to be able to get this data out for you, but you're getting it to lean on the intelligence of it and finding patterns between all this different data that you have. So you just don't hire an assistant to echo back to you, ask them to give you advice, to maybe give you insights on a specific deal that might be happening or why prices might be changing over. You can employ a large language model who has access to these systems to be able to do that on your behalf. And I'm not going to stand here and explain that this is a magic bullet. A lot of the clients you've specifically worked for, it requires a lot of finesse and being able to work with them to understand where these large language models fall short. Because a lot of what we found is that a lot of these ideas and these workflows actually live inside people's heads. They're not documented anywhere. The data is in different systems. It's siloed. And just giving a large language model access to this data doesn't solve that problem. So you actually have to change the way you work and really rethink the processes that you currently have. And in this specific session, I want people to just focus on a small set, like maybe just giving a large language model access to your Gmail and your calendar and being able to schedule appointments for you that have come in, for example, or organize your different emails, like organize and prioritize them. Which is the most important? Which isn't the most important? Why is this one important? Why isn't that one important? And really lean into having someone as a collaborator and as an assistant that can pull in this data and help you on a day-to-day basis. So don't try to get it to solve everything for you, because that is a really hard problem to solve, but just to focus on a small specific problem. And that's why we've broken it down into 4 different segments. So it's not a chatbot, it's not a search engine, it's an operator that works across your systems on your behalf. So we recognize this problem at Civic is that these language models really excel when they have access to your different systems, right? So if they have access to your CRM system, they have access to your calendar, they have access to your email. And we needed to figure out a way on how to do this in a secure way. So we built the easiest way for you to be able to talk to your systems and be able to talk to these different applications that you might have. And that way, your large language model has access to all the data it needs, and it can give you a lot of interesting advice in a single chat interface. So you've got one CRM, you've got one price book, one invoicing system, one place to work from. And we really want you to idea that this is actual assistant that you're working with. So I'm going to just show you, but this works inside of our platform as well. You can connect your tools in Claude, you can connect them in ChatGPT. We're not trying to sell you specifically for Civic Nexus. We're just trying to show you that this was a problem, that the large language models really become powerful when they can connect to all your different systems. So Civic Nexus connects your business tools and AI as you manage them through a single conversation. Just run you through a quick demo. So you can see I've got a chat interface, exactly how you got Claude, ChatGPT. But you can do this in Claude as well. And you can see that it's got access to my different applications that I want to give it access to. And then I can start asking questions. I'm not going to go through this in too much detail because we're going to do a demo around this. But I just wanted to show you the fact that you can connect your different applications to the large language model that then has access to this data. And that's where it really shines. So what we're going to walk through today is your week starts. You've got a scheduling and TM coordination. You might have leads that are coming in, triaging and following them up. You're trying to get an accurate quote that's coming in. How can you leverage the language model there? Or you're trying to get paid through invoicing and syncing your books. I want you to think almost creatively of how you might use something like this to solve your own problems that might not necessarily fall into this. So we're going to start with the first one because you don't just want to hear me talking, you want to actually see things working, right? So the demo one is your week starts. We've connected Google Calendar. We've given access to Gmail and Google Calendar to our large language model. We're the owner of an Apex Mechanical Services. It's Tuesday morning. You've got 3 new client emails sitting in your inbox, each one requesting service this week. So how can you leverage the intelligence of this model to be able to sort that out for you? Don't just throw AI at anything that you might think is a problem, but really think about what is you're trying to solve, right? It's a Tuesday morning. You've got 3 new client emails sitting in your box, each one requesting service this week. You also have the existing appointments in your calendar. You need to read and understand each request. Figure out who's most urgent. Find open slots that work around your existing schedule. Book the appointments and confirm with each client. Now, really take time to think about how much mental energy that might take and how it's not interesting work to be able to do, right? Like you don't want to open an email, read through it, store that you have to prioritize this one is more important than this one, and then go to your calendar and figure out where you can put that invite in. What happens if you could just go to your assistant and say, listen, you've got access to my Gmail, you've got my calendar, go find these emails, organize them for me, send up a follow email and book them for me. And it can just do that for you. And I think that's taking and giving you back at least 20 to 30 minutes of your time. But at the same time, you're not spending mental energy doing that. You're not switching between email, calendar, and trying to keep it all straight in your head. So let's see how AI can handle this, right? We've got these emails that have come in. We've got our existing calendar conflicts that are already conflicting with these emails. How can we leverage a large language model to use its intelligence to be able to book around this and prioritize which emails are the most important? So this is the prompt here. What you look out for, the AI reads all 3 emails, extracts the key details, who, what, when, and urgency. It checks the calendar and identifies open slots, reasons about priority, navigates around existing appointments, creates calendar events, and gives you a summary, all with a single prompt. So let's just take this prompt and go in and paste it in here. Yeah. So there's a lot of talk about agents and the difference between a large language model and an agent. But an agent is basically just given an input. It has access to these tools. It's going to fetch that data from all these different tools. And then it's going to determine when it believes that it's answered your query. So if something comes back from the tool that is incorrect, it might make another request and reason over that request to go fetch it somewhere else. So it's constantly thinking about where and how to solve your request, without just giving you an input and then just getting a response. It's doing stuff behind the scenes for you. And you can actually see what it's doing here. It's going to Google Calendar, Gmail. It's getting the current date and time because these large language models are trained on it up to a specific date. So if you ask it what the date is, it's generally going to tell you when it was trained up to, which is the incorrect date. So you need to get the correct date as well. It's going to search all my Gmails. It's going to find my calendars. It found those 3 messages, and it's going to read the content and check the calendar for me this week. So I can just leave it here, go have a coffee, and come back and just have the response there for me while it's doing all the work on my behalf. And while it's doing this, I don't know if one of the questions that I actually wanted to specifically ask in this specific point is that, oh yes, one of the things that actually happened to me earlier today is that I just told the large language model to go send these emails and actually book these calendar events for me. And without realizing that I actually had said that, and it sent an email I got a bunch of failed responses that came back from those emails that were sent, but actually one went through. So someone's probably going to get an email from me that is a fictitious email about booking a service appointment. So one of the things you just want to do harper on is if you're working within Claude or ChatGPT, it's going to ask you for confirmation before you do anything. So rather get it to summarize and ask you for your advice before you want to do something. And the more you trust with it, the more you can run with it. But the idea is that really stay in the loop the whole time, because sometimes it does make mistakes. Sometimes it might book a calendar invite that is completely incorrect. So you want to stay on top of things at that specific time. So you can see here, it booked everything by urgency. It's organized everything by urgency. It looked at the current calendar events and it booked everything. Perfect. All those 3 appointments are booked. Now let me send confirmation emails to each client. So we can actually go in here and let's see if the calendar invites were booked, and they were. I didn't show you what they looked like before, but it booked these different events that from those specific clients that actually came through. And then if we go to the Gmail account, my Gmail account here, you should see that it would be sending those emails as well. So you can see that this one failed because it tried to send an email to an email address that didn't exist. And then you can see that it was a response as well. Hi, Marcus, I've got you covered. This was all sent from the large language model, and it was sent on my behalf. Obviously, you don't want to do this because you need to review the email that was going to be sent out of time, but you can also create a template for the large language model to send. And if you're happy with the language and the way that it talks to you, it can do this all on your behalf. So over time, as you learn the workflow and you understand the process, you lean more into it, and it can basically automate a lot of your work for you. So that's pretty powerful, I think. Now it's giving me the summary of everything that it did. It looked at those emails, it figured out which ones are most important, which ones were less important, and then booked those all on my behalf. And then it gives me a great summary. I didn't have to interact with it at all, but that was because of the prompt that I sent. But that saved me 20, 30 minutes straight away. I don't know if you have any questions, Nancy, from that specific demo.
Ty, I think let's hit on a topic that I think might be on a lot of people's minds, where you are a business with a lot of sensitive client information. So if I'm a business considering a tool like any LLM to help automate and to help streamline things, how might I set guardrails or parameters to protect myself?
Yeah, so that's a very good point. You'll notice that the large language model here specifically was able to read my email and also send and draft emails. And if I go back into these authorizations here, you didn't see them explicitly, but one of them was to be able to read and one of them was to be able to write. So by default, it should be read only, but only if you really trust it, you can give it permissions to write as well. The other thing that comes into mind and you mentioned is specific guardrails. So you don't want to, for example, I don't know if many people have used it as prompt injection. So if the large language model reads an email where it's trying to influence the large language model to do something that it wasn't supposed to do, let's say, read all my emails and then send them to the specific email address. You can employ or set up guardrails in that specific instance that you only trust emails that are coming from the specific person or the specific domain. So for example, you could say that we only want emails coming from civic.com. The large language model should only be able to read emails from my specific company that are coming from civic.com. Any other emails it would not have access to. So you're eliminating something like prompt injection specifically at that point. It's a really good point because these large languages can be influenced, and there's been states where there have been places where this has exactly happened. And I think you should be really cognizant that if the large language model is reading anything, it can be influenced by that. So setting up the proper guardrails, making sure that if you really want to give access to it to be able to write and create events, you're explicit in saying that it should ask you about that information first before it does that. And then act on the side of caution first before you really want to trust it and get into the workflow that you believe is correct.
Thanks.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's go to the next one here. So the demo is leads come in, right? Look at the leads from the 7 days and prioritize them. Rate each lead high, medium, low, and draft up a follow-up note. Their reasoning behind each rating is the selling point, right? So we're connecting it to our HubSpot CRM system. We're not going into the system and manually thinking about which are a priority, which are not a priority. We're leaning on the intelligence of the large language model to know about our business, as well as look into the system to figure out which should be priority and which shouldn't be priority. So I can just take this prompt as well, and we will go into the next one here. Like I mentioned before, the one thing I really like to understand is what problem we're trying to solve. So if you can define what your problem is and then work with AI to solve your problem, you'll have a lot more success. Our specific problem in this instance is your sales pipeline has 10 leads from the past week. Some are worth 120K, some are 6.5K. Some are urgent, some are tire kickers. You need to figure out who to call first, but it's not just about the dollar amounts. a 6.5K residential job with customer getting is only 3 quotes, might need attention before 120K deal that won't close until Q3. So let's take this prompt. And we're not going to mention any of that detail to the large language model. It needs to figure that out by itself. And we'll go to a new chat and we'll paste in this prompt. We might not watch it run through everything because it does take some time. But the one thing that's also really important to mention is the idea of garbage in and garbage out. It's not a magic bullet, and we tend to dismiss the large language model, the AI, based on it not being able to do a specific task. But if you think about talking to a specific person and asking them to do something, if you talk to the way that we watched most of the way that people talk to large language models, the person would have no idea what they're trying to talk about. So really be explicit in your instructions. Really think about what you're trying to get about. And this requires mental effort. It really requires you to sit back and understand what you're asking it to do and what problem it is trying to solve. Because if you give it garbage data, if you give it generic responses, if you don't really understand what it is you're trying to solve, you're going to get a generic answer back. And that's really important to remember, is just sit down, think about your workflow, think about the problem you're trying to solve, and then automate around that. And yeah, so you can see here, it organized them by priority. It gave me a summary of exactly what's coming out of HubSpot. And then it gives up a follow-up note that I could then send to the client. And this is a good example of not sending it on my behalf yet, but I can literally say, go to HubSpot right now, and I can say, okay, cool. Hi, Robert. I can say to the large language model, okay, I don't really like the email you sent here to Robert. Can you change X? Can you change Y? Can you change Z? And then please go in and send that email on my behalf. It can do it here as well. It's just giving you a summary before it does anything. So you're still interacting with it. It's not just doing everything on your behalf, but it's probably doing about 80 to 90% of the work. You're just reviewing it and sending it off on its when you're happy with it. I really want you to think back and take a step back that if you had to go into your HubSpot, get these contacts, really understand the different data, craft a follow-up email, it takes a long time. And we find a lot of people are doing that and then asking the large language model to write an email. So they're taking that response and then pasting it in Gmail. We want to try to streamline everything in a single chat. You can just stay here and work directly inside of this chat application. So that is demo 2.
This is pretty amazing because, as you can see, we have quite a few follow-ups here. This was really executed in a matter of minutes by Nexus, which is incredible.
Yeah, exactly. The nice thing is that this is just an example. If someone is working in the industry where they need to streamline in a different way for the way that they work, the idea is that we like to say that a prompt is the feature. So if you need to remove a specific field or you need to do something else in a different way, you can just prompt the large language model to do it in a different way. If you think about how software was built previously, it would take a very long time to be able to make changes and do those changes over time. But if you really think about your software as just being the prompts, it really changes your mindset, because then you can really think, okay, how can I cater and change this thing and massage it in such a way that it's specific to the way that I work and that the way that my business works as well. And you don't have to go hire and employ someone. It has to be explicit in the way that you work. Previously, and I like to talk about this specifically, is that you had to purchase a piece of software and then learn how it worked and understand how it worked and adapt your business to how that specific piece of software worked, which tried to be generic across all different systems. But that actually breaks down when you go to individual small businesses. For example, case in point, we had a client that we were working with a few weeks back, and they were using ServiceTitan, which is a CRM system. And they like to keep their price book data inside of ServiceTitan. But what happened is all the vendors would send them their price list only quarterly, and it would come via email, and they're in all different formats. So what they had to do is then take those price lists, look through them, import them into ServiceTitan, make sure that they were correct to what was actually in ServiceTitan. So somewhere along the line, the prices were changing and they had no idea, which means that there was no way for them to quote accurately. And one way to solve that with a large language model is that it is multimodal. And what that means is you can take that invoice, you can throw it into ChatGPT, you can ask it to extract the relevant details, and then use that details then to update ServiceTitan. So it's not a complete up-to-date system, but you still get that history of how prices are changing over time. And then you can leverage the large language model to say, okay, we've got this history of prices. It looks like this specific vendor 20% have been increasing for the last, I don't know, 6, 7 months. Why is this happening? And then it can look at that data and it can say, actually, you're right. You should probably contact them because the data that you have in this system is completely different to this data that you have in this system. Given them the tools to be able to go back to the vendor and say, look, listen, this is the price list I've got. This is what I'm being invoiced. Why is there a difference here? And then it also allows them to be able to quote accurately over time. So yeah, hopefully you can see the benefit in that as well. I want to go back into the next demo.
Okay, we've got one question here. Amy, forgive me if I've misinterpreted your question, but your question was, do you have clients that download an LLM to their computer and bypass Claude and ChatGPT and other language models like that?
So you can run a large language model locally, but it requires a lot of like computes. And what I mean by compute is like processing power. My laptop, a desktop computer is not going to be able to run a large language model locally. And I assume maybe most people want to do that in order to keep it private, right? So they don't want the data leaving the computer to go to an external system. So it doesn't have to go through OpenAI, it doesn't have to go through Anthropic, it doesn't have to go through third-party services that you may not trust. So that's the main reason why someone would want to use a local model. But unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, is the models that are coming from these frontier labs, which is Anthropic, OpenAI, they're a lot stronger than the ones that you're going to get that you're able to run locally. And depending on what you're trying to do, if you're trying to do something sophisticated like this, where it's trying to reason about your different tools and really try to do something that you would consider quite intelligent, you're going to get a lot better results with the latest models that these frontier labs are using. But not to say like maybe your sensitive data doesn't go through to a local model. There are different techniques and ways people can do that, but it's not like right now, because we're still in the experimental phase, a lot of people are just using these frontier models like OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, because they are so powerful and they're releasing so quickly. Running a large language model on your machine probably won't work, but yeah, there's different ways around that depending on what you're actually trying to do.
Awesome. Thanks, Ty.
Cool. So this is the third demo here, and I'd like to just talk about this. So we talked about our client here. Their data is all kind of out of sync. And what I mean by out of sync is that their price book data isn't up to date, and they've got a CRM system where a bunch of data is actually coming in, and they aren't able to access that data and quote clients reasonable time. So what we did is we want to be able to sync this data from the price book and show the user what changed, right? Like we want to say, okay, 20% refrigerant increase, 16% copper increase, motors went up 12%. If they have insight to this data and they can ask questions in natural language, and even lean on the intelligence of the model by asking it, can you find different patterns in here? This changes the game completely for them. So let's just go back to this third demo here. So let's always state the problem. Your supplier prices have changed. Refrigerants are up 20%, copper is up 60%, but some motor prices actually dropped due to the vendor rebate. You've got approved pricing updates sitting in a spreadsheet that need to get synced into your price book. You need to update everything and see a clear picture of what changed so you can adjust your customer-facing pricing. So all I'm going to do is go sync approved pricing into what changed here, and I'll start a new chat. And I'll paste that in. The one thing you're probably asking is like, how does it know about my business based on just that single prompt that I've just asked? And I've set it up in such a way that I've given it enough information so it can infer what I want. I'm saying that, okay, this is where the data lives, this is where the price book data lives, and this is what my business is about. And it learns over time based on how we talk and how we speak about my different workflows as well. So right now you can see that it's going to try sync. It says, first I'll check what approved pricing is pending, sync those changes to the price book, log the changes to an audit trail, show you a summary of what is updated. The important part here is logging those changes to the audit trail. So at any time, someone in the business can say, okay, how did this price change from here to here? And then they can trace that whole input of how things changed. And that becomes really powerful because this assistant large language model is acting on your behalf in your business. It's like an employee. It's making all these changes. And it is stateless. And what I mean by stateless, it's got amnesia. Anytime you start a new chat and you ask it what it just did, it's not going to remember. So you need to record all those different steps so you can actually audit exactly what happened. And that's how we've set up this specific workflow. I can see the approved pricing shows things synced, which means they've already been synced. So I ran this prompt before It already took the data from my price book, it moved it in, and it understands that it shouldn't have to update that data again because it's already done it.
So what you have in the beginning here, this one simple prompt, it was preceded by certain processes that you took with the large language model. Will you elaborate a little bit more about what you did to the point where it's smart enough to know exactly what you want in this particular context?
Yeah, let's just say, I can just ask it, what do you know about my business? So it knows that I'm Apex Medical Sheets. Okay, it's just asking me to authorize here. It saw that I had access to Google Sheets as well, but I hadn't given it access yet. So that was a good example of giving it access to my company spreadsheets as well. And then it's trying to gather all the information. So it's seeing all the different tools I've got, all it can pull in that different data. I'm not going to read through everything out here, but I'm going to just say, can you give me a one-line summary? Can you give me a sentence summary? So what's really nice by looking at this is that by giving it access to all my different systems, it's really able to get a good idea of what my business is about and how things are run. Okay, so it already did it for me without me asking. You're a mechanical service summary with integrated operations data across multiple platforms, HubSpot, ServiceTitan, QuickBooks, Bill.com, data available. I did give it access about what my business is. Let me actually just ask that quickly. Just say, what data is in my profile without looking at the external. So I set up my specific profile on this stage, which is modeled over my business, what it should look like and what information it might need in order for a large language model to be able to understand it. Because the one thing that I did mention is it's got amnesia every time, right? Every time I go from one chat to another chat, it doesn't know anything unless it can pull from a single source and know exactly about where to fetch that data. And that's how it's able to do that. So it's got the description, it's got the type chat. So you can think of it like a prompt that if you're working in any of these systems, you usually take one prompt and you go to your chat and you paste it in, and then you go to another chat, you paste in the same prompt. You don't have to do that. It already gets that data whenever you start a new chat, if that answers the question, Nancy. So that's important because then the business actually, the large language model is getting to know you and how you work over time. It's not starting from a blank slate every time. It's almost that prompt is being injected.
Thanks so much, Ty.
Okay. So let's go to the last one right now. We just want to close the loop. You want your business, if it does not making money and you aren't able to close the books, it's not worth doing any of this, right? So we want to start here in the final one. A job is done. Now you need to get paid. That means creating an invoice in Bill.com, marking it sent, and syncing it into QuickBooks so your books stay clean. 2 systems, multiple steps, easy to miss something. So we're going to start with a specific prompt. Create a customer invoice in Bill.com for cold store distribution, mark it sent, and sync the invoice into QuickBooks Online. Return both IDs there. So the reason I'm saying please return back those both IDs is just gives me confirmation that what it did was correct because those specific identifiers are generating on those systems. So let's do that. And this just closes the loop, right? Like we're able to do so much with so many different tools. We weren't trying to get it to run this massive workflow, like using all these tools. You didn't have this massive prompt that said, go do this, go do that, go do this. We wanted to keep in the loop the whole time. We wanted to understand what it's doing. We want to watch what it's doing, but we don't want to do anything manually. And what you noticed is that I didn't have to go into each of these systems and learn how they work and what they do and understand the different intricacies. Like one of the things is I don't like Google Analytics. It takes me so long to figure out where to find that right information, right? But these models can do it on my behalf. I can just literally ask it a question. It can go in and find that data, bring it in, reason over that data, give me a response. I can have a chat with it, talk to it. And that's where the real power is. And that's where we're seeing customers specifically are noticing a shift in how they operate. Because one of the questions we keep asking them is, what's one thing you wish you knew that takes you either too long to answer or you don't know the answer to? And that drives a lot of like how solutions get built around working with large language models, because Then you figure out, okay, where's this data missing? How can we fetch this? How can we fetch that? And if we can connect the large language model to all these different systems and prompt it in such a way, it can then really act as like this really super employee where you can move very quickly and focus on what you want to do. So it's going in, it's doing all that information there. I've already run this prompt, so we're not going to wait for it to finish, but I'll just show you what it did at the end. So first I'll check the customer deal. You could see that it's very similar to what it was doing over there. Then it created that invoice. Then it returned me back the references. So if I want to go into those systems to be able to find that data or find that invoice, I can use these and then go there and be able to reference it. It just gives me clarity and confirmation that I know it was created there. And I was able to create those invoices and sync to QuickBooks. You'll also notice here is that I said, okay, just create an invoice in Excel. It connected my Excel client. It created a spreadsheet for me. And then it even sent me the link to open that spreadsheet so I can see everything that happened. It's not pretty, but I didn't ask it to format anything. It just literally created the spreadsheet for me and put in all the different dates. And I could talk to it and tell it to, please do it in this way, or do it in that way, or do it in this way. And it would be able to do it for me. But this was just literally a single thing that I sent to it. So let's just go through everything. We went to the fourth one. What I just really want people to understand here is that we took 4 workflows, right? If you had to do it, it's probably about between 3 and 5 minutes. And there was 0 manual data entry. The AI didn't just answer a question, it took action across all your business tools. That's the difference between a chatbot and an operator. And I think if people change their mindset of how this thing can help them do the mundane work, the work that they don't like, and giving it access to these different tools so you can ask questions around these different tools, that's where you're really going to get the benefit. Don't treat it like a chatbot where you have to copy and paste information in. Really treat it as someone that can take hold of your business and work across and help you streamline. So you can spend more time being on sites where your expertise matters the most, or closing deals, or managing relationships. AI doesn't replace your people, it gives them back the hours they lose to admin. And I know maybe you will look at these different workflows that we took and they might not directly relate to what you're trying to do, but I hope that it gives you an idea of how you can connect your different systems and think about AI in a different mindset where it can do the mundane work for you so you can focus on the stuff that makes you a little bit more creative. So one thing I also talk about is that it's really not here to replace people. The people in your company that really understand the business process and the systems, they're the ones who are able to bring their expertise and really leverage the AI in the business because they understand how the systems work. They understand where to get the different pieces of different data, and they know how to connect everything together. So that allows them to move a lot quicker and then move into things that they actually enjoy as well. I quite like Claude as opposed to ChatGPT is also great. It's really good at I've got no biases there. I just really like it because it looks nice. But you can see here that I've also got access to all my different tools here. You can see here, like I showed you, we had Google Calendar, Excel, a few others, but you can connect also all your tools directly to Claude as well. Or you can connect Nexus, which is what we demoed here. So you can use it in the tool of choice that you like to use. But this is something we notice people don't use a lot, is being able to connect to these external systems. And that's where you get the most benefit out of them from.
We love the sneak peek into your webinar planning here.
Yeah, I literally use it for everything, just to show me some notes that I might have forgotten during this presentation. Also what I needed to fix and how I needed to do different things and make sure I didn't forget anything else. But I don't think I did. I think we covered basically everything.
Yep. Ty is telling the truth. He genuinely uses large language models in his daily work. So I'm gonna, maybe Ty, if you want, we'll just do a mini Q&A. How does that sound?
Yeah,
okay.
sure.
I'm going to bring up one of our favorite questions. We tend to get this in every single webinar. So as a business owner, you have your choice of any large language model out there, right? There's ChatGPT, there's Claude, there's Perplexity, what have you. Does it matter which one you go with? Is it just a matter of personal preference? What would you advise?
I think it really does come down to a personal preference. They tend to really compete with each other, like especially the big companies like Google, Anthropic, OpenAI. But some of them might have a personality that you enjoy a little bit more, or write in a style that you enjoy a little more. There might even, the actual application might look a little bit different. Like I noticed Anthropic Claude is a little bit warm and the way that it's formatted. But the actual specific model itself, it really does come down to preference. Each of them do have their top models, which are more expensive to use. So if we go to Claude here, for example, it's using Opus. And if I started a new chat, okay, it's not going to show you here, but it will say that Opus tends to use more tokens. So if you're paying for the $20 amount, you only have a certain amount of messages you can send to the model before it tells you to go to a lesser model like Sonnet or Hyoku. So to answer your question, all the different labs have different models. If you're trying to really work with them on a hard task, like maybe trying to do research or ideating, for example, then really move to the stronger model, experiment there. Yeah, so I think that hopefully answers your question.
Yeah, it does. All right, we've got another one now from Paul. So Paul says, besides setting up guardrails, what happens when files are removed or something is changed? I would say Google Drive is a good example.
Yeah, the important thing is there, you can explicitly state what you want to do and not want to do. So if you're connecting something like Google Drive, I actually don't know if there's a history to revert if you've done something like delete a file. I think you have a certain period where you can revert it. But yes, it's happened to me plenty of times where, for example, right now before the demo, I sent a message and I didn't realize I said, please book those calendar events and send those messages on my behalf. And it already did that. And the reason it did that is because it already had write access. I already authorized those applications to be able to, the large language model to be able to do things like send emails and book calendar events. But the thing is, you want to really lean on the side of caution. And inside of Nexus here, you can specifically say to the large language model, I don't want it to be able to do X. I don't want it to be able to do Y. I don't want it to be able to do Z. Can you set up the appropriate guardrails so it's impossible for the large language model to be able to do that? And most time of the case, it'll set up those guardrails exactly how you want it to be set up. So even if the large language model is doing that specific thing, it won't be able to go do it because those guardrails are in place. And it's really important to understand that the data isn't going into the large language model's context window. It's staying outside of the context window and it's blocked just before it goes in there. So the guardrails are set when the input comes in and when the output's coming out. So you're not sending any information that is going to be influenced by the large language model, like passwords. You want to like mask PII, for example. It's not going into the context window. So the guardrails are specifically set there for the input and the output. So you can set it up appropriately. But to answer the user's question, if you connect your different applications and then you go into it and you say, okay, please set up these guardrails. I don't want the large language model to do this. I don't want it to do that. It should set up everything for you. So it can't do that on your behalf. But you should really lean on the side of caution, right? Because it tries to please you. It really will try to please you. And it's really good in inferring, but it often gets it wrong. So we are bad communicators and we might say, okay, please do X, Y, and Z without really figuring out what the complications of that's going to be. And then it's going to try please you and it's going to go do that for you. And then you're going to say, why did you do that? And it's going to say, oh, sorry, what you meant was completely correct. And then it can't go back and do it. So really lean on the side of caution if that answers the question.
Damien asks, what type of logging is available? What can I hand to an auditor?
If he's using Nexus, it is logged for 30 days and then it's completely removed. But if he wants to give into a specific audit, it depends on if you're trying to build your own system. If you're trying to use a large language model to build your own application, for example, you can log everything that the large language model is doing because all it's doing is you're sending it input, it's going to the system, it's coming up with a reasoning and it's sending the response back. And then you can see when it's trying to call those different systems and what it's trying to call those different systems with. So if you're building your own application and you're trying to leverage a large language model to do it, you can audit the whole thing because it's not really doing anything on it on the servers inside of OpenAI Anthropic. It's coming back and telling you this is what it's trying to do, and then you doing that. So you can literally audit everything the large language model is trying to do and then send that to the auditor. And then inside of Nexus, obviously, we log the tool calls the response, and if you're using the chats inside of that.
Got it. Thanks, Ty. And Damien, we'll check on the other part of your question about whether it's EU compliant. We'll get back to you. We have your email. And there's a question from Amy here. Amy says, do you have suggestions for system stack for home service providers?
A system stack for home services providers in terms of using a CRM system that they currently exist, or like most of the things we come into the place, we see the client has these systems already in place, like they have ServiceTitan. They have their own invoicing tools. They have doing all the marketing in ServiceTitan, for example, as well. But then they got Invoice and they got Box.com as well. So we don't really guide them on what tools they should use because a lot of these systems are independent and powerful and by their own means. We just come in and we try to figure out exactly how we would be able to connect or optimize their business in order to use AI. And oftentimes that requires us getting them to think about it in a different way. But it really comes down, we won't say to them, okay, no, you need to stop using QuickBooks, or you need to stop using Bill.com, or you need to stop using ServiceTitan, because it's so integrated into their business. We more think about the lines of, okay, this is where the pain points are, this is where they're battling with. How can we automate this process using the existing systems so it's a little bit more streamlined? One thing we have been noticing, and I think it's going to be a big problem going forward, is that these companies are starting to realize that these large language models are super powerful and that users don't necessarily want to use their systems, right? If you don't have to learn how to use ServiceTitan, or you don't have to learn how to use analytics, or you don't have to learn anything, you can just let your large language model to do it, then those systems don't have any leverage, right? They don't, all the leverage is the data that they're providing to you. So what we're noticing now is that they're trying to build agents inside of their own little pieces of software. It means you still have to go in, but you can do things a little bit easier and a little bit quicker inside of them, but it doesn't give you the power of leveraging a large language model that can act across all your systems. I don't really have a solution to all of that, but I think that's the way that it's growing, because if APIs are going to become the new standard and large language models can connect to your systems through APIs, it makes sense that these companies are going to be a little bit more sensitive about just giving their data away. But hopefully it's a bridge.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Yeah, exactly. And we probably will get there, but not yet. There's a question from Amy. Amy says, do you have recommendations for visual AI systems that could help with creating high-end visual proposal templates? So maybe sales decks, it sounds like, or reports for clients.
Yes. So I don't know if what you've tried or what you haven't tried. Anthropic Claude is really good at being able to connect to even PowerPoint, for example, or create artifacts or even create applications for you on the side. And it's really good at being able to generate those reports for you. What we've noticed, I don't know how sophisticated those reports are that you're trying to generate, but if you connect, let me actually just show you here. Please go away. I don't know if you are specifically using PowerPoint, for example, but it literally lives inside of the system. So you can just chat and it'll create everything for you and really create powerful things for it. But there's also for Excel as well, which you can do a similar thing. So what I like to think is that these models are really good at becoming generalists. And what I mean by that is they can really do a wide range of tasks. And there's this new standard that's come out that's called skills. So you could give your large language model a skill for building a specific presentation to do something on your behalf. But I just want to show you how you've got Claude that's talking directly to Excel. So you never have to touch the spreadsheet. Thank goodness for me, because I don't like doing that. But you can just tell it what you want to do and talk in natural language. And you can see on the left-hand side that it does that for you. Here is skills here. You can extend Claude with skills as well. And basically, there's a lot of skills that you can download, but yours could be specific to your business or a specific tool that you're using. You go find that skill, you add that skill to Claude, and then it will be able to generate using that piece of software that you've got in a specific way. A lot of them have adopted this standard that's called agent skills. So even if you're using ChatGPT, they've been using Claude. You can almost think of it like the Matrix, right? I like to think of it like that. Imagine this large language model doesn't know anything, and then it gets plugged into the Matrix, and then it gets all this new capabilities that it can do. So almost think of it like that. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question. But without knowing a little bit more, it's hard for me to give advice there. But yeah, you can learn about all the different skills you can plug into your large language model. So it's a lot more powerful than just the standard.
So Amy says she's looking for marketing docs with a focus on visuals. Maybe Ty, you can elaborate a little bit more on Canva MCP, for example.
Oh yes, so Canva does have a nice MCP as well.
Yeah, we've been playing around a lot with Canva in Nexus lately, especially since I'm in marketing. So it's just something very natural to my work.
Yeah, so generally any system that you're working with that you like to use. So if you are using Canva, if you're using something else that you tend to like, generally just go and look and say MCP server. And what that means is that allows a large language model to connect to it. So Canva has their own MCP server. They've also got their own MCP application, which means that you can work with Canva directly in Claude as well and be able to edit images in natural language and tell it to generate specific images in a way. So if you're working with a specific tool, look for that MCP server, like Canva, for example. Canva is a very good one. If you're trying to really generate good images, Google Gemini has something that's called Nano Banana, and you can generate really high quality images using Nano Banana. I think I paid the $20 a month price for it, but remarkable stuff. And just natural language, you can upload an original image. Actually, sorry, I know I'm saying here, this is actually a good, go watch this Google Super Bowl Gemini ad. If you've got time, go watch the 2026 Gemini ad for Google. And then it shows you like how you can take a photo, edit that video, be able to, sorry, I'll put it here, I'll just show you an example of how they take different images and then they remodel a bedroom based on that. And hopefully you can use something like that. So that's all generated by Nano Banana. Took an empty image, referenced it, pulled in different images, and you can get quite creative with it. I've seen people do some really amazing stuff with it. So if you haven't used Nano Banana before, go ahead and use it. It's really quite remarkable. And it generates text. A lot of these things in the beginning were really difficult in being able to generate text on top of images. But right now, Nano Banana is really good by saying, okay, I want you to include this text inside of that image in order to be able to generate it like that. And you might also find that a lot of these tools, I know like in Demo, which I created my presentation, has an integration with Nano Banana. You have to pay a little bit extra for it. And you might find that in Canva, they might also offer that model as well. I just don't know off the top of my head. Yeah, like they're really getting really good when it comes to being able to do creative stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, Ty. You know what? We're at the top of the hour, a little after. Damien, I'm going to take your comment as a compliment for us. And I think we are going to wrap up. So Damien and Amy, we will follow up with you on the outstanding items that we didn't get to answer. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, everybody. And we will follow up over email.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.